the two questions I'm not going to cover tonight, just because I answered them in the order given, and these are two big questions, was the first one was, what about gluten? Should we all be going gluten-free? And you'll know that gluten is actually a number of protein. It's a couple of proteins found in wheat, rye, barley, and yes, beer as well. So your play between now and next month is, what I'd like you to do is go to your supermarket or wherever you shop and look at some gluten-free products and just read what's in them. Just have a little read for a start. And secondly, I want you to take a note of whether or not you experience, in the course of your daily life, any symptoms that you can't explain, which are like fatigue, bloating, diarrhea, abdominal discomfort, constipation, headache, anemia, brain fog, not feeling just right. Just make a note if you ever have any of those symptoms and how often. So that's your gluten homework. Just sort of look around the supermarket, pick up a few gluten-free products and just see what's in them, particularly gluten-free bread. And the second question was a very similar question, and it was about dairy. What do I think about dairy? Should we be all going dairy-free as well? And your little play for this particular question is, again, go to your supermarket and pick up cheese, spreads, yogurts that you would like to eat. So pick up a range of cheeses, maybe some feta, some ricotta, cottage cheese, cream cheese, tasty cheese, whatever cheese you like, and look at the ingredients and make a note of the ingredients. Same with yogurts or whatever dairy you eat. And then I'd like you to have a look at some non-dairy milks. So soy milk, almond milk, coconut milk, and just have a look at some of those ingredients. That's all. Take a note and we will discuss it all next month. And one of you sent this in to me, which I thought was fabulous. And your final piece of play is, I'd like you to check this out. Is this actually true that margarine is 1 molecule away from plastic and shares 27 ingredients with paint? Yes or no? So we're going to cover all of that next month. But this month, I was asked the $1 million question. I know what to do, so why aren't I doing it? And there are several answers to that question. And the first answer is, the first reason people don't do what they want to do is they're actually not as clear about what they want to achieve as they think they are. So my first question to you, and that's the first answer to why aren't I doing what I think I should do? And this person says, I know what to eat. I know I should be exercising. So why do I still eat junk? And why do I still not exercise enough? So my first question to you is, you need to set what are known as outcome goals. What is it that you want to achieve? Write it down for yourself. So I'm going to give you some examples of outcome goals. I have a healthy blood pressure, or I'm free of all medications, or my waist circumference is 80 centimeters. I feel fabulous about my body. I fit into a particular size. I'm in excellent health. So there's something that you're aiming for. And I'm not even going to go any further until I'm going to give you just a minute to write down an outcome goal for you. They are just examples. You might have a goal of, when COVID is over, to run the London Marathon. What is it, something that you're striving for in relation to your health and why you're listening to these webinars? And we call that an outcome goal. When you have an outcome goal, I want you to write it in big writing and put it somewhere where where you can quickly and easily access it. But what's equally important is to have what are known as process goals. And they are things that you can commit to here and now. And they are steps towards achieving your outcome goal. Because it's all very well to say, okay, I want a waist circumference of 80 centimeters. Where do you start? You have to set intermediate goals to help you get there. So I'm going to offer you 7 really powerful process goals, all related to health. And you will see they are all things that doesn't matter what's happening in the outside world, you have total control over whether or not you execute these. And they're behavioral goals. And that's the most important thing to focus on day to day. You can forget about the outcome goal if you're not focusing on actually executing these process goals. So the first process goal is, Ask yourself before you reach for food, and it's the first mission, am I really hungry? And I think we underestimate the power of this. Before you reach for food, before you open the fridge door, before you start cooking dinner, am I really hungry? And then if you're not hungry, you can ask yourself, okay, so why am I reaching for food? But all I'm asking you to do is to ask yourself the question so that you start now, your relationship with food becomes 100% aware. No, I'm not asking you to do anything but ask the question. And it might seem laborious at the start, you might need to keep reminding yourself. But once you've been asking yourself this question for even a couple of days, it becomes second nature. Asking the question is a bit like having tricycle wheels. Once you get your balance, you can remove the tricycle wheels and you will just automatically ask yourself that question without even voicing it. So that's your first process goal. Your second process goal is before you eat anything, just drink a glass of water. And the purpose of that is, number one, to make you pause, and if you've forgotten to ask yourself, am I really hungry? You will now pause a little bit. And secondly, if you fill up your tummy to a degree, you are likely to eat less during the meal. So it's a way of helping you with portion control. It's a simple one. Your third process goal is to take a deep breath before eating. That's all. Just you sit down, and it's also you can link this to connecting with gratitude for what you're about to eat, and just really deeply appreciating the fact that we are so lucky with all the food that we have available in this day and age. So just take a deep breath before anything you eat. The next process goal is to savor every mouthful and really and truly absorb the flavors, the colors, the textures, the tastes, the smells, because our senses are heightened when we are hungry, and you'll actually enjoy your food more if you eat when you're hungry. But just, it ties into the next goal. Don't save the best till last. And I'll tell you, I should first ask you, do you know what that means? You know, when you've got a piece of pork with some crackling and some vegetables? Well, most people, not everybody, most people like the pork crackling the best. And we have a tendency to save that till the end of the meal. Don't. Eat the pork crackling first if that's what you like best. The reason being, you will enjoy it all the more. Your smell is heightened at the start of a meal. Your taste buds are sharper at the start of a meal. So you will enjoy it all the more. The further we get into the meal, our senses slowly start to become less sensitive. And there's a reason for that, to slow us down so that we become aware that we're actually getting full. So if you save the best to last, you're actually not going to enjoy it as much. And secondly, you'll force yourself to eat everything else before you get there. If you eat the best first, then it's all downhill from there. Again, you're likely to eat less. You don't have to finish everything on your plate. Invest in Tupperware. The next process goal, and it's also related, is don't eat and multitask, because that just, number one, it reduces your appreciation of what you're eating, because the brain can only focus on one thing at a time. So it doesn't matter whether you're reading the newspaper or even listening to music, if you don't have your full attention on your food, you're missing out on some of the pleasure of food. And it doesn't mean you can't eat in company. Again, some of your attention will be on the company for a while, and then bring your attention back to the meal. All of these first 6 process goals are about actually enhancing your appreciation of food, and ironically, you'll end up eating less. We don't overeat because something tastes too good. We overeat because we're not tasting it enough, and we're not yet satisfied. But when we're satisfied, when we're truly satisfied, it's not hard to stop eating. Which leads us to the final process goal. Ask yourself as you go through the meal, am I 80% full? And once you hit the 80% full, that's the time to stop eating. Confucius used to teach his students, you don't eat until you're satisfied. You eat until you are no longer hungry. And that is a completely different concept, and it's so not Western society. We tend to eat until we can't fit any more in. That is a recipe for feeling bloated and uncomfortable after the meal. If you eat until you're 80% full, within 20 minutes, you'll be glad you stopped, because it takes about 20 minutes to the message to get from your stomach for all the chemicals produced by your stomach and your fat cells to get to your brain to tell you you've had enough. So these 7 process goals, can you notice firstly, you are 100% in control of them. And secondly, they will all not only enhance your enjoyment of food, but at the end of the day, you'll actually end up eating less. So let's put up our first survey question. And it is simply, do you feel, and you know it's anonymous, do you feel that you can commit to those 7 process goals? There's no right or wrong, and it's anonymous. But I'm just interested if I've landed with, you know, the kind of process goals I've given you. So could you commit to these 7 process goals? Yes? Some of them? No, it still feels all too daunting. So Craig, you just, you know, when you've got all everyone's answers, then please show us what people have said.
Will do. We're almost there. There's a couple more people to vote. And let me end that poll and share results for you.
So yes. Well, that's great. 100% of people could at least commit to some of them. Fabulous. Write down the ones that you're going to commit to, and if you know you're going to get this replay, so you can write them down later, but write down the ones that you're going to commit to, and between now and next month, if you commit to them, your quality of life and your health will definitely improve, and your enjoyment of food. Thank you very much, Craig. All right, I'm going to give you 3 more process goals, which are totally unrelated, just to give you another feel for how all these different steps lead to your ultimate goal. I'm going to invite you to do a fridge and pantry audit. Everything in your fridge that has a label, read the label. Everything in your pantry, if it has a label, read the label. This is if you haven't already done so that you become aware of exactly what you're eating. Because what continues to surprise me is when I talk to patients and we have a discussion about what they eat, a lot of them say, look, I'm eating really healthy food, and yet still I feel hungry, or I still have inflammation, or we still haven't got blood sugar levels in control. And they're so surprised when they read labels that they didn't realize that savory things, for instance, had a heap of sugar in them. So I'm going to ask you another survey question. Do you read the labels of everything that you consume? So Craig, would you like to put up the next survey question? Again, I'm interested. Yes. You read the label for everything you buy. I'm talking food. Though it wouldn't be a bad idea to do that for other products as well. Most of the time, occasionally, no. And again, Craig will show us the answers when they're there. So most of the time. Okay, I invite you to ramp that up to all the time. And again, you're not going to have to do this for the rest of your life. It's not going to take you 2 hours to do every supermarket shop, because you will soon learn. Once you've read labels, you'll get the idea. Thank you very much, Craig. And this is all about increasing your awareness, so you're 100% clear of what you're consuming. Which, as I said, brings us to the next process goal, and your final process goal that I'm recommending. And this is a really powerful one. At the end of every day, give yourself a clap, not a slap. And what I mean by that is, just when you go to bed at night and you're drifting off to sleep, run through your mind all the things that you did that were really positive for your health. Okay, I got to my yoga class, or I did a few stretches, or I did my HIIT, or I did all those 7 process goals. Write down, at the end of every day, just do a little audit for yourself of all the things that you did that were good for your health. Now, the reason this is so powerful is it starts to transform our identity for ourselves. And you start to see yourself as a healthy person. And that's when things start to take on a momentum and a life of your own. We're saying no to junk is a no-brainer. You just find yourself saying that automatically. You don't feel like it. I'll tell you what, people don't mess with your identity. Let me give you an example. At work, even though it's a medical clinic, I'm constantly amazed at how much rubbish, people bring. But people No, and I've never said anything. I just bring my own lunch. I eat my own lunch. And I've had comments along the way that, oh, geez, you know, isn't it hard work? Always, you know, bringing a packed lunch, always preparing your own meals. You've got so much willpower, you never eat junk. And I say to them, no, it's not willpower. I just don't feel like it. I just don't eat junk. I just don't eat, you know, things with added sugar. And because they sense it's part of my identity, there's no resentment there. There's no, you're no fun. It's just who I am. And it's a bit like if you've got children, your kids know when no means no and when no is negotiable. And until a healthy person or a person who exercises or a non-smoker or a non-junk food eater becomes part of your identity, it's always going to be negotiable for yourself and for the people around you. But the minute your identity changes is when you've drawn a line in the sand and it's no longer difficult. And it'll take things like giving yourself a clap, not a slap at the end of every day to create that identity transformation. So right now, write down 3 positive things that you are on a consistent basis doing for your health. And when you've written down those 3 things that you know you're already doing that are good for your health, I'd like you to write down at least 1 more. I've given you 10 process goals, just 1 more of your own specific process goals so that something you can take ownership of. What is something else that you're 100% in control of that you can do consistently that will bring you closer to your outcome goal? And it could be doing a few stretches when you wake up in the morning. It could be spending time, you know, every lunchtime, you go outdoors in your garden or on your deck or whatever you've got to get some sunshine and to enjoy nature. Or it could be doing, you know, a HIIT before breakfast. Write down at least 1 specific process goal for yourself. Okay. The next question I received, which was sort of linked to the I know what to do, why am I not doing it, was also, you know, why do I lack motivation? Why do I lack the energy to do what I tell myself I'm going to do? I've got so many competing demands. I just haven't got the time to exercise regularly and haven't got the time or the resources to cook healthy meals on a consistent basis. And my answer to why all those things, so why don't I have the motivation, or why don't I have the energy, or why are there always these competing demands, is you haven't got in touch with a big enough, compelling enough, powerful enough reason for changing your behavior or for adopting those habits that you want to adopt. So my answer here is find your why. Go back to your outcome goal. Why do you want to have a waist circumference of 80 centimeters? I'm just plucking these outcome goals as examples. You know, why do you want to be medication free? I mean, it sounds obvious, but write it down so you really get in touch with the positive feeling that it's going to give you. What difference will it make to your life? What positive difference will it make to your life when you've achieved that goal? How will you feel? That is really, really important. Because the more emotional the reason, the more excited we can get by it, the more we will see it through. As Friedrich Nietzsche said, he who has a powerful why will conquer any unknown how. In other words, if you have a big enough, compelling enough, motivating enough reason for wanting to achieve something, you will achieve it. Even if at the outset you have no idea how. Because we always make time for what's important. If you say to me, I've just got too many other competing demands on my time, that simply means that those other things are more important to you. And don't beat yourself up about that. Just be aware of that. Which leads me to the next question I received. And I congratulate this person for your honesty. I don't want to give up the pleasure of sweets and treats. It's as simple as that. I don't want to give up those life pleasures. My first answer to that is most people don't want to give up those sweets and treats. And a lot of people say it's not worth the sacrifice, never being able to eat chocolate again. And that's not what I'm saying anyway. But the first thing to be aware of is it's only a perceived sacrifice. Because go back to what I said earlier. If you have a big enough why, if your reason for not eating junk is greater than the pleasure you receive from eating the junk, then the junk doesn't stand a chance. So it's when you experience the pleasure of being healthy, the pleasure of being more energy, of having more energy, the pleasure of a new identity, the pleasure of knowing that you are in control, that you've got the health to achieve anything you want, that's when it's not going to feel like a sacrifice anymore. And the other thing too is we live in a culture that's constantly indoctrinating us to believe that food is entertainment, that food is a treat, that we should be rewarding ourselves with food. That is a social, cultural, consumer construct. Food was never designed to be entertainment. It doesn't mean we can't eat food in an entertaining setting, but it's, there are so many other sources of pleasure in life. So if you go back to my book, NeuroSlimming, and the chapter Trick or Treat, we're choosing to view sugar as a treat. Personally, sugar is a trick. It changes our brain chemistry. It actually influences our gene expression. It increases inflammation. When you really get sugar is toxic on so many levels, it no longer feels like a treat. Remember that we create our experience of life by the stories we tell ourselves. So as long as you continue to label sweet foods and junk foods and fast foods as treats, you'll feel like you're missing out. But the minute you, in your mind, label them as non-food, as toxic things that might taste great, but they're still toxic, the minute you no longer perceive those things as a treat, no, just don't talk about them as a treat, you'll no longer feel like you're missing out. And to help you, I think one of the things I mentioned last week was when I was a child growing up, you only had cake on birthdays. You only had certain foods on certain times. Bring back as much as you can the idea of special occasions. And it's only on those special occasions that you eat particular foods. And I tell you what, it will bring back a sense of childlike joy and enthusiasm. I think I don't know very many people who get excited about a lot of things in life. And it's not because we're adults. I think it's because we've got too much available 24/7. But the minute you create your own specialness around things, you'll actually enjoy them more. There's a concept known as hedonic adaptation that when we get the new car, when we move into the new house, we're really excited. But once we've been there for a while, it just loses its excitement and it just becomes run of the mill. So the excitement you got the first time you drove the car, if cars are your thing, is that just dies away once you've driven the car for a year. Just doesn't give you the same excitement. It's known as hedonic adaptation. And I think we've done that with food. Food doesn't excite us anymore. Ice cream doesn't excite us anymore because we can eat ice cream 24/7, every single day of the week. What about making ice cream just something that you eat on a hot day when you're at the beach? That then, makes it special. And you actually increase your enjoyment. Less really is more when it comes to food and the enjoyment that we get from it. So what I'd like you to do now too, and this is a really powerful thing to do, get your pen and paper again and write down a list of non-food treats. I'll give you some of my own examples. Having a massage, reading a fiction novel that has nothing to do with my work, just reading, an old-fashioned newspaper and getting my hands all black. I just really enjoy that. Listening to a piece of music, ringing a girlfriend, walking in nature. What are some of your non-food treats? Doing puzzles, actually. I just really enjoy them. Doing some brain teasers. They are non-food treats because in my situation, because I run my own business, I could be working 100% of the time. So a lot of these things may not be treats for you, but they are treats for me. I'm going to pause and not talk for just a few moments and let you write down a list of your non-food treats so that you start to associate treat with things other than food and alcohol. Okay. Now the next question I received, so I'll read it here, so I read it word perfect, was about kombucha. The question was, to me, was, what is my opinion of kombucha? Is it better than soft drinks? The particular person said they've seen a brand called Tea Gardens made with hemp, which claims to have no sugar and only 7.5 calories, 30 kilojoules. Do I recommend it? Well, Craig, would you like to put up the next survey question? I'm just interested to know whether or not you think that kombucha is a healthy beverage. Yes, no, depends on the brand. I don't know. Okay, yes, no, depends on the brand. I don't know. Okay, the answer is made by traditional recipe, and in theory, kombucha is a healthy drink. However, it does depend on the brand and what they've added to it. So, to answer that question, firstly, what is kombucha? Kombucha has 4 ingredients: water, tea leaves, so tea, sugar, and a culture of yeast plus bacteria, which is given the fancy name of SCOBY, and it stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So basically it just means it's a mixture of microorganisms. And sugar, yes, is an essential ingredient of kombucha because, sorry, I've moved too fast, because without the sugar, there's no fermentation. The sugar is required for the yeast to act on it, and that's what, gives it the fizziness. And it converts the sugar to alcohol. And then the bacteria in the kombucha converts the alcohol to something like acetic acid. So what kombucha is it's a drink made from tea that's been fermented, and there should be no sugar left by the time the yeast has acted on it. And therefore it is possible to get 0 sugar kombucha. However, as with all things, it depends on the brand, and it is entirely up to the brewer how much sugar they put into the kombucha. And people know, brewers know that, human beings tend to like sweet things. So some of them deliberately add more sugar than they know the yeast will ferment in order to have a product with some sugar left over so that when you drink it, it tastes sweeter. And so basically the message once again is read the labels. And going back to the brand that I was asked about, the Tea Gardens, I looked at their website. I'd never heard of them before. I personally don't drink kombucha. However, if I were to drink anything, and the reason I don't drink it is just I don't think to drink it. I just like water. Water is enough for me. Water and coffee, or just plain straight green tea or black tea or dandelion tea. We'll get to that survey question in just a second, but the short answer is, if I were to drink something other than water coming from a bottle, kombucha is by far a lower sugar, healthier option than any soft drink, any fruit juice, any Gatorade, any vitamin water, and even the highest containing sugar kombucha. So I did my homework. I looked at as many different brands of kombucha as I could find, and the amount of sugar in them varied from 0 to 4 grams. So that's even the worst kombucha had only 1 teaspoon of sugar per 100 mils. And a soft drink has, more than double that. So if a person, for instance, was a 1 Coke a day drinker and they swapped that Coke for kombucha, they'd probably, by the end of the year, save themselves 12 kilograms of sugar. So I'm not sponsored by anybody. I don't drink it myself. However, as I said, if I were to drink something other than water, I would choose kombucha, and I would choose, I like the brand that the questioner asked. I couldn't find anything wrong with the Tea Gardens. They have 0 sugar in a lot of their brand flavors, and it was very low calorie. So I don't see anything wrong with it. But there are also some companies that will add flavorings and all these supposedly natural herbs and spices. I would personally just stick to the straight stuff because I don't know what else they might put in it otherwise. So the rule is, read your labels. Okay, now the other question I was asked was, is kombucha alcoholic? So now I'm going to put it to you. I've sort of explained what happens, and from that, what do you conclude, Craig? You can put up the survey question. Okay, what do we conclude? Yes, no, it depends on the brand. I don't know. You're all actually correct in that for it to be marketed, okay, the bacteria is supposed to convert most of the alcohol, or just about 100% of the alcohol, into acid. And in order to be classified as a non-alcoholic drink, each state actually has its own rules. In Queensland, I know it has to have less than 0.5% alcohol in the whole beverage. So in theory, it's got trace amounts of alcohol, if any. So the short answer is no, it's not meant to be alcoholic. And if it's sold as not alcoholic, then it can't have more than 0.5% alcohol in Queensland. I think New South Wales is a bit more lenient. I think it might be 1% or 1.5% even. Trust the New South Welshman. But anyway, but interestingly, a lot of people say it's their way of drinking less alcohol because it's a really refreshing, tangy kind of special drink. And the final thing I want to answer is kombucha as healthy as they claim? You know, it's the next superfood, it's fermented, it's got all these probiotics. In theory, it has probiotics, it has anti-inflammatory phytochemicals, even some of the acids have health benefits. However, once again, it just depends on how it's made, how long it's fermented, the temperature that it's kept at, you know, how quickly it's been refrigerated. So it potentially has health benefits, but they're probably not as fantastic as you probably just don't absorb as much, and then it's not as great as it sounds, but it's certainly, I can't find that there's anything particularly wrong with it at all. Okay, so there's the kombucha. And interestingly, somebody said, you know, could you help me cut down on alcohol? What can I do? And it's a similar, go through the process that I went through in terms of write down your outcome goal. Okay, I'm a non-drinker, or you know, specify how much you'd like to drink. And remember the current recommendations are men and women no more than one standard drink a day, 10 grams of alcohol, 100 mils of wine a day, no more than that, any more than that. And it does increase your risk of cancers, you know, liver disease, dementia, the list goes on. And unfortunately, the idea that a glass of red a day has a positive impact on your health, particularly heart health, that's been shot down. One glass a day doesn't have a negative effect necessarily, but it doesn't have a positive effect. So if you're a teetotaler, stay a teetotaler. But one way of helping you cut down on alcohol is savor every sip, employ all those process goals and apply them to alcohol, and perhaps swap out alcohol for kombucha. There you go. I just found that and I wanted to share it with you. Okay, final question that I received was, two more questions. I had a question about slow cooker food. Remember last week I talked about different lengths of cooking affect the amount of calories we can extract. So the question was, I have a slow cooker. Is this good or bad news? A slow cooker is fantastic. It does make the food easier to digest, but it does not detract from the health benefits. And I think slow cookers are absolutely fantastic because, you know, they're a great way of getting a whole lot of vegetables and herbs and spices into your diet. It lasts a long time and it retains the nutrients. So good on you with your slow cooker. Okay, final survey question for tonight. Is lying down as bad as sitting? The next question, I'd like to read them exactly as I was asked the question. So the question was, you often say sitting is the new smoking. Does that apply to lying in bed as well? So let's ask you the question before I answer it. Is lying as much a health hazard as sitting, and why? Yes, no, I don't know. Okay, thank you very much. The answer is yes. Sitting and lying down both have a negative impact on our health if it's for prolonged periods. And when I say lying down, it's not sleeping is sleeping, but it's resting is the issue. So basically, let me just check time. I just want to make sure I'm still on time. Okay, right on time. So basically what the research has found is that The health hazard from either lying or sitting comes from not engaging our muscles, our quadriceps and our gluteal muscles. When we do nothing but rest them, we start to create inflammatory chemicals. We start to find that we have more inflammation throughout our body. We start to lose bone mass. We start to lose muscle mass. And interestingly, what the researchers, so breaking that sitting with just, remember I talk about it all the time, or that lying with just, every half hour, make sure you move in some way, or just stand up or engage those muscles, or engage your core muscles, or just do some squats. It's the fact that our muscles are inactive. That's the problem, whether we're lying or sitting. So interestingly, they looked at different cultures, and kneeling or squatting is a great alternative. I was an exchange student in Japan, and it killed me because they would kneel or squat all the time. And because I wasn't used to it, I found it really painful. And I'm not suggesting you spend your life kneeling or squatting either. However, it is healthier to kneel or squat when you want to have a bit of a rest, because when you're kneeling or squatting, you're engaging those muscles. So you're not getting the buildup of inflammation. And, it's part of a lot of cultures, Asian cultures, African cultures. And this is, and they looked at, a lot of those African cultures, it's not that they rest any less than we do. They're not spending all day running after the bison. They are resting just as often as we are, but they rest like this picture. They don't have chairs. So it's the not engaging our muscles that's the problem. Okay, so I'm really proud of myself because I was asked to stick to time, and I have my 40 minutes. And just remember, if any of this stuff is uncomfortable or tedious, discomfort actually means that you're rewiring your brain. And it's only tedious until it becomes a habit. Remember one of my first slides today, motivation gets you going. Habit gets you started, and habit keeps you going. And any discomfort is only short-lived if you persist at it. Thank you very much for your attention. Is there Craig, perhaps you can...
I've had a look through, Helena. What if the answer is no, I'm not hungry, but I still eat anyway? I feel like you kind of covered that off. It's back to your, what's your why question.
It goes more than that. I will answer that question because it's a longish answer. If the answer is no, I'm not hungry, but I eat anyway, the question is, what are you needing that food to do for it? And usually it's, you want to change how you're feeling in some way. So the definitive answer to that, it's an easy answer, but it's a difficult execution, is if you know you're not hungry, but you want to eat anyway, what's the feeling that you're trying to block? What is it that you're trying to avoid by eating? It might even be a physical procrastination. It might be just that it's a habit. It might be that you want to break, but just sit there with the craving. That is the most powerful thing you can do. Alternatively, you can turn to a non-food treat. Then
we've got a couple other ones that probably could be answered later on, but any hints for dealing with Baker's cysts? No swimming pools open in Melbourne. And is it important to soak grains such as rice, oats, quinoa, for example, for phytic acid reasons, enzyme inhibitors, and nutritional absorption?
Again, because these are long-ish answers, great. Craig, can you save them, and I will answer them next month, because I don't want to just rush through them. I like to give you the why for my answers.
Yeah, I've done that. I've captured a photo of that, and so we can answer that next month.
Yes. Oh, yes. And just somebody said to stop at 80% full is difficult. It goes back to discomfort means you're rewiring your brain. Yes, it is difficult when you first do it, but it isn't difficult once it becomes a habit. And, play with it when you're at home. And again, if you're 80% full, when you're 80% full, you're actually no longer hungry. So the reason you're eating more is usually out of habit. And it's difficult because it's a habit. And it's difficult because you were taught to finish everything on your plate. And it's difficult because we don't want to waste food. So play with that, sit with the discomfort, get your Tupperware so you're not wasting food, and just recognize how much more comfortable you will actually feel in 20 minutes. you know, if you don't overeat. So I'm just recommending, difficult is not hard, it's not bad. Just because something's hard doesn't mean it's not desirable. And when we accomplish something that we label as difficult, how much more satisfying is it?
Last question is, do all cultures use food as more than nutrition?
Absolutely, they do. But not all cultures overeat, even if they use food as more than nutrition. You know, food is a way of welcoming somebody into your home. You know, in Serbia, if you go to somebody's house, it would be the height of rudeness not to offer them tea, coffee, or food. You know, it's just what you do. So yes, it's not that we're not, I'm suggesting we don't enjoy the pleasure of food, or we you know, sharing a meal that I've cooked with, you know, my friends is all the more pleasurable than eating by myself. But that still doesn't mean we need to overeat. And it still doesn't mean that we choose unhealthy things. You know, I take great pride in, everyone loves coming to my place, you know, that my friends, they go, you know, we know that it's going to be something really healthy, and we know that it's going to be a real experience in savoring. So even though we use food for more than nutrition, that's not necessarily a bad thing when it's in the context of, you know, celebrating birthdays and celebrating occasions and showing that we care. But when we use food to stuff down our emotions, when we use food to avoid life rather than celebrate life, that's a different story.
That's probably a good place to end.
Thank you very much for your participation. I'm really thrilled.
Thanks everybody for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month.